Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt and I'm here in beautiful Beaufort, South Carolina. I've been spending a few days with the new GMC Acadia. There's a lot to love about this new Acadia and we're going to cover it all, the best and the rest, starting now. And we're going to start under the hood, but we're not going to talk about what is under the hood. This is more about what isn't under the hood. Now this new Acadia debuts with a new 2.5 turbocharged 4-cylinder, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But the thing that gets me a little bit is the fact that it's a new generation car and it doesn't come with a hybrid. It doesn't come offered as a plug-in hybrid. Maybe those things will come later, but as of now, the turbo 4-cylinder is the only way you're going to get it. Front wheel drive is going to get about 23 mpg combined. All-wheel drive is going to drop you to about 21 mpg combined. Those are reasonable figures. They're about bang on in the segment, but that's why I might like to see a hybrid to make that really compelling. And we're going to step into the second row for a minute here and talk about. Now, generally speaking, it's a good second row. We'll talk about that more on the positive side of the video. It's great space and everything, but there's just a couple things missing here that I may have expected from other things in the segment. Things like rear window shades, you're not going to have them, and no cooled rear seat. You can get heated rear seats back here, but no cooled rear seats. So just a couple little things that are missing, and one of the stranger ones, I think, is that you can't get a bench. It's captain's chairs only for the new Acadia. And then we, of course, have to talk about price. Now you can start to get into an Acadia for $44,000, and that's going to be a front-wheel drive elevation trim. You add in $2,000 for all-wheel drive, and if you want to go all the way up to a Denali with all-wheel drive, it's going to start at about $57,700, and then some options and packages on top of that, depending on how you want to spec it. That does make it one of the more, if not the most expensive option in the segment, but this is the only professional grade option in the segment as well. But switching gears and talking about all the best things about this new Acadia, one of the best things is the size of this thing now. Last year this thing was about the smallest in the segment, and now it's one of the biggest. They've stretched it 10.5 inches from last year. It's also 3.2 inches taller than last year. Just about the same size as the Traverse now. This is kind of the sweet spot for this segment. Last year this was more Highlander size, and now this year it's much more Grand Highlander size, making it more competitive, and that gives you a lot more third row space and trunk space. And speaking of the trunk, it is very good. It's one of the biggest in the segment now. We'll talk dimensions in a second, but it also has a very cool feature where if I have the key in my pocket and I simply walk up to the tailgate, I don't have to kick or anything and look silly in a parking lot. It's just going to automatically open for me. But once you're in the trunk, it is massive. You've got 23 cubic feet with the third row up. You can fold that down electronically. You can get 57.3 cubic feet with the third row down. And the max capacity is 98 cubic feet of cargo space, and that is class leading. And if that weren't enough, you lift the floor and you have a huge cubby down there. Definitely a place that's benefited from that stretch in wheelbase and length overall. And the other place that's benefited from that extra length is here in the third row, like we said. I'm 6'1", and I've got plenty of room back here. I've got 2 inches of knee room in front of me. I've got plenty of headroom, I've got cup holders, I've got USB-Cs, I have air vents, I have pretty much everything that I could need back here. And they've strategically moved the windows a little bit forward. They made the C pillar a little bit smaller and they made the D pillar a little bit bigger. So I actually have a little bit more visibility and there's more light coming in to this otherwise very dark and black cabin. Pretty good third row. Very competitive now with things like Grand Highlander, Telluride, and Palisade. And when it comes to styling, I do think this is probably one of the better looking options in this segment. It does have some truck influence. It's a little bit more geometric, as you might expect, but especially in this AT4 trim with all the blacked out accents, looks very good. Of course, the face is all new, and that's spearheaded with the new grille. You've got C-shaped running lights, which are very sharp and do a bunch of animations when you approach and leave the car. You've got LED fog lights. Your AT4 gets red recovery hooks, and it's also lifted an inch, but we'll talk about the AT4 a little bit later. But in the Denalis, you do get body-colored wheel arches, and as far as wheels go, you can either go down to 18 inches on the AT4 or up to 22. This is the first time there's been a 22-inch wheel on an Acadia. Of course, you can get that on the Denali. But the profile shape is very boxy and classic SUV. And the rear end design is very nice, simple, geometric, and clean. And it's got that black middle mustache between the taillights, which I'm seeing more popular lately on things like, I don't know, Mercedes GLC. So very luxe indeed. But one of my favorite styling elements has to be the squared off quad exhaust that looks like it was taken straight off of a Corvette. Kind of fun. But we're back underneath the hood on the good side of the video because I do want to talk about this new 2.5 turbocharged 4-cylinder. It does make pretty good power, 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque, and at lower speeds it does feel fairly torquey. Now it's not going to sound the best, but I think it's probably okay. It's fairly responsive, especially in sport mode, and it's pretty smooth the rest of the time. And that's partially thanks to the new 8-speed automatic. No more 9-speed for this generation. And like I said, you can either get front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive depending on what you want. And fuel economy figures are 23 again for the front-wheel drive and 21 combined for the all-wheel drive. So pretty solid little mill down here. And then we're back in the rear seats to talk about all the good things going on back here. Like for example, your captain's chairs slide and recline for max comfort. You have a huge panoramic roof bringing in a bunch of light, and you've got the same nice materials from the front. Nice little detailing and piping and stitching and different textures. You've got heated rear seat. Of course we don't have cooled, but I think it's okay. And you do have a third climate zone back here. But one of my favorite features is the way that they keep this kind of in this shape. So if you have a car seat here and you need someone to get into the third row, you don't have to remove the car seat for them to be able to do that. It's just going to stay this way and move itself out of the way so you can get into the third row without a lot of hassle. But I have to say, one of the most captivating things about the new Acadia is the professional grade interior you get here. Now this AT4 has a black interior, which is fine, but the white interior is so good. You do get heated and cooled front seats, you get heated steering wheel option, of course, and you've even got two-person memory for your driver's seat. You get wood trimming across the cabin with the Denali embossments, of course if you get the Denali, and the ambient lighting is really good too, very sharp and lots of colors. And the Bose audio is pretty good. And I do like the big screen that they have in here now, but they've kept some physical tactility for the climate control buttons, and they're always on screen. So if it was me and my money, I'd probably go Denali just so I can get that white interior because it is very good. And the towing figures are healthy here as well. Last year you were capped at about 4,000 pounds of towing, but this year now with the new generation you can get up to 5,000, which definitely puts it in line with max capacities from the Hyundais, the Kias, and some of the others in the segment. Definitely at the top in terms of towing and muscle. And as you might expect for a brand new generation, it's loaded to the gills with all of the tech features that you want. And some of my favorite things are the things you get standard, like the 11-inch digital instrument cluster. That's standard, and the huge vertically oriented center screen, 15 inches, that's standard as well. And it even gets you wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and you can even see stuff like Apple Maps in the cluster. You've also got a really nice head-up display as well, but then back into your screen, it's huge. It's got that floating volume knob, kind of like we saw in the Mach-E, and it's just that little detail that goes over the top for me, and I do like it. The Traverse screen is slightly larger, but it doesn't look as nice as this one. But the software is quick and snappy, the graphics make sense, it's got Google built in, you get a digital rear mirror, you get 360 cameras with 9 different views, and far and away one of the best features is the fact that you can get Super Cruise. It's available on every trim. That's pretty awesome. But one of the last things I want to talk about is specifically about this AT4 trim, because it's actually pretty legit. The AT4 gets a bunch of unique stuff, like all of the chrome stuff you'd see on the Denali is Vader chrome or dark chrome or whatever. But you also get front recovery hooks that are painted red and actually work. You've got skid plates underneath. You've got plastic arch cladding to protect the wheel wells, and those arches even have amber lights on them like you'd see in a big HD truck. Of course, you get specific Goodyear Wrangler all-terrain tires that are very legit, and unique 18-inch wheels that are specific to the AT4 trim. The ride is pretty good with them. You get about 1.2 inches of lift between the tire and the suspension for the AT4 as well. And the AT4 is going to get an exclusive active torque control with a twin clutch rear differential to help it send power to either wheel when you're off-roading. And the AT4 also gets a unique interior color called Forest Storm, and it is pretty cool. GMC Acadia. Foot down. Yes. Sorry, bike guy. Unleashing the fury of the 2.5 turbo, 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque. Here with my friend Brian from KBB and Auto Trader and the general internet at large. We've been spending the last 2 days together driving around in the new GMC Acadia. And I have to say, there's a lot I like about this thing. And there's some things I don't love about this thing. Like the sound, for instance. It sounds a little raspy, a little coarse, but the ride is quite good. It is definitely professional grade in terms of ride. The steering, it's a little light, it's a little numb, but you know, that's probably what you want in this segment. The rest of it's pretty natural. It rides well, the visibility is pretty good, Super Cruise is fantastic, even in the AT4 with the bigger tires here. The steering wheel will jitter a little bit like this, but it's just visual. You can't feel it in the car. The car is not bouncing around or doing anything crazy. It is going arrow straight and following the road, but there's a lot that I like about this. There are some strange things that we've covered in the video, but there's the sound, which is okay. Yeah, so in terms of ride, cabin refinement, and overall feel of quality on the road, it's pretty solid. There's a little bit of wind noise, but in some trims, depending on how you spec it, you'll get the acoustic laminated glass, you can get some active noise cancellation, and then there's also an adaptive damper set. And then the AT4 that we're in here has a very specific suspension tune that's a little bit more off-road oriented and helps with rebound. But overall, I think all of the Acadias that we've driven this week have been very smooth. I think the ride we both feel is very on par for what this is.
Like, that did not feel powerful.
Yes, well that's because we're we're laden with all these professional grade interior bits and the luxuries. Sorry, the premiums.
Yeah, but the Traverse did feel like it had more thrust than that. Maybe I'm crazy, I don't know.
Maybe you are. But maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah, the power is okay. There's times when I really get into the throttle that I kind of wish maybe we had a V6, maybe we had a little bit more torque, maybe we had a little bit more power, and that just would probably help it sound a little bit better too. And the Telluride and Palisade are getting the same fuel economy about this, just about, with a big NAV6. So, you know, you weigh your options there. I'm sure the next generation Palisade and Telluride are going to go turbo 4-banger and then hybrid. So the days of the V6 are coming to a close. But in terms of fuel economy, this is better than it was, but it's not life-changing or earth-shattering. But no, I think to wrap it up, I think overall, it's very pleasant. It's very solid, it's very comfortable, and yes, if you're gonna get one of these, highly recommend Super Cruise if you can swing it, because it is a very, very good system, and it makes piloting this thing very relaxing. So I'd like to thank GMC for having me out to South Carolina to play with the new Acadia. I'd like to thank Brian for being a cool dude and hanging out with me this week, and I'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.